What do castles, old building ruins, old churches, lakes, giant horses all have to do together?
What?
Keep watching to find out!
Welcome to Around the World with Joshua and Alyssa, and we're happy to see you again. And we are going to start looking at some other countries that we have been to in Europe today. I don't think we've done any countries in Europe yet, so that is what we're going to start with today. And Alyssa's going to get us started with
Scotland!
Yeah.
We're going to talk first about kind of like the countryside and some things you could see if you go to visit, and then we'll talk about the cities next week.
Sounds good?
Because I had too many pictures to pick from. So we'll start there. We have our first picture here. Scotland is really beautiful. I didn't realize how green it was. And we went probably beginning of June, end of May. So I think it was kind of during part of their rainy time of the year, which I think it's really rainy there a lot. But it's just so beautiful and green. And there are these little waterfall kind of things everywhere. This was just like along the side of the road. We were driving along, taking a little tour of the Highlands part of Scotland, and this was just there, just these little waterfalls running through the rocks. There are some bigger waterfalls too, if you want to stop and do a little bit of hiking. This one was really pretty. It had a nice lookout over the area, and it was up in the Highlands. They say that there's this really cool hike you can do where you can hike the entire Highlands in, I don't remember, like 3 weeks or something crazy like that. Maybe even longer. It sounded really fun to me, but I don't know if I'll ever do that someday. They also have a lot of locks. Now, if you think lock, maybe you're thinking like a lock and dam, but it's actually a lake. This is a really famous lake.
Oh, is this spelled like L-O-C-H?
Yeah.
Oh,
that's kind of like a funny joke.
That kind of lock.
Yeah, that kind
like
of
the
lock.
monster.
Yeah, like the Loch Ness Monster. It's a lake monster. So this is Loch Lomond, and it's a very famous loch in Scotland, and it has a cute little town right next to it. And the history of Scotland is very old, so a lot of the buildings and the churches in the area and the roads and the little walls and stuff are from a very long time ago. This is just a cute little church right there beside the loch. Kind of cool. And they have a lot of history there from a long time ago. Like this cool tower, it was like a watchtower for a battle. We couldn't go up inside the day that we got there, but I think some days you can, and you can see for a long ways, even though everything is so hilly around the area. We also went to quite a few castles, and I'll show you a couple more pictures when we talk about the city. But this is one of the castles that we went to. That's me and my roommate from Guam, Carrie. Her parents were missionaries in Scotland for a little bit, and so we got to visit and see some places that she had been to or some new ones, which was really fun. And we just loved the castle. We spent a lot of time just exploring here because it's all open. You can just walk around and kind of imagine what it would have been like to live there back in the very small numbers of the world. And they had some pictures of what they think it could have looked like to kind of help you imagine it, and it just was really fun. We loved it. Now, this is kind of like the older side of Scotland, and Scotland also has a more updated, more of a modern look to it too. So Joshua mentioned when he heard loch, it made him think of the Loch Ness Monster, right? They also have these things.
Ooh.
These are called kelpies. And like the Loch Ness Monster, these are also water horses. So they're like some type of mythical creature.
Oh, like a seahorse.
Kind of.
Except bigger?
Yeah, but these are huge. I don't know if you can see the people at the bottom. My roommate and I are the ones on the right. She's got like her orangish colored jacket on. We're so small. These things are huge. And they made them to kind of like the size they would imagine these monstrous creatures to be.
Whoa.
But they're relatively new. When we were there, they were still building them. You can see all the cranes and stuff, putting them all together. They're all of these steel plates, and you have to back way up to see the whole thing. But it's kind of cool. a piece of their past that they just want to bring back and kind of let people enjoy. They're really cool to see. Huge.
Wow.
They also have a lot of these all around Scotland. These are wind farms. So it's a bunch of windmills together in a spot that's got a lot of wind, obviously, and they harness the energy. And I looked up, and in 2015, they had 59% of their energy brought in by renewable resources, which is a lot. So it's a very windy place, and they've found ways to collect it and be able to use it for their country, which is pretty cool. So we got to go to the wind farm, and those blades are really loud when they come swooshing around. But it was kind of cool to see that creativity of man. Here's another thing that shows man's creativity and how cool God designed us to think and put all these things together. This is called the Falkirk wheel, and it's actually like a lock and dam, but it replaced 11 lock and dams. So you can put a boat on one side of it, and it turns kind of slowly, and it brings you down to the level of the water that you see right in front of you. So I don't have a picture of the other part of it where the higher part was, but it is an incredible feat of engineering. It only takes the power that it would take to power 8 tea kettles. So it doesn't even use that much power. It's the way it's been shaped and how the water works with it and the weight distribution and everything. It's pretty incredible. But there's actually a boat in it. You can kind of see on the left, there's like a little red edge to it, and it was a boat. We watched it come all the way down. It was really cool.
Nice.
So that kind of shows you some of the modern features of Scotland. And I'm pretty sure, as long as nobody's built another one, I think this is the only one in the world like this water wheel lock and dam kind of thing. It's pretty amazing. It was really cool to see that.
You mean it's that good and they only built one?
I know, right? It was pretty expensive to build it, though.
Oh, okay.
So I think that's why there's only that one.
Okay.
But if you're ever in Scotland, you should go visit it. It's pretty impressive. Kind of cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, over the next few weeks, we're going to look at several places in Europe because between the two of us, we have been to several different countries over in Europe. Only a couple together, but apart, we've visited quite a few.
Yeah.
So we'll be sharing those with you in the upcoming weeks. Also, last week, hopefully you saw the very obvious Lego car sitting behind us. This week we have something else hidden, so be looking for that. And Alyssa is going to start a new missionary story.
Yay!
So I'm excited about that one.
Yep, we have a new one. Also, another one of my favorite missionaries characters to read about. I had a story of hers that I kept reading a lot. The other one, the Run, I listened to that one on cassette tape when I was little. That's how old I am. But it was a really great story, and I loved it. So here's our new story. It's about Amy Carmichael. It's called I Dare, and it's the story of her life. Now, this story is laid out a little bit differently. And the other stories, we've kind of talked about like the beginning of the missionary's life and how they got to the mission field and what kind of ministry they did. But this one kind of goes back and forth. So we'll start off the beginning of our story talking about something from when Mary was younger, and then we'll talk about how God used that in her life as she was a missionary. And we'll kind of keep doing that each time we do the lesson. So if you watch the next one and you're like, wait, Mary's a little girl again? Don't worry, that's how this story goes. It's kind of cool. That's a different way to look at it. So, have you ever gotten the answer no to something? And sometimes you're like really sad because somebody gave you the answer no. But you know what? It's not always a bad thing to get the answer no. Sometimes it's better for us than what we think we want. And Amy. Amy learned that, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about in our story today. We're going to learn about how no is sometimes a good answer. So Amy was born in Ireland, not too far away from Scotland, also in Europe. She was born in Ireland just about a week before Christmas, and she grew up in her family in a small house, all of her siblings in one room, 7 of them. And they had a little stove with a nice fire and some nice beautiful windows to look out. And so Mary got to grow up with her siblings in their house. Now Mary, oh my goodness, I liked that story so much I can't switch characters. Amy, Amy's family went to church and they talked about God a lot in her home. And every night, Amy's mother would pray with her before she would go to bed. And she would tell her, God always answers. God answers prayer. He always answers prayer. So Amy heard that so many times as she was growing up. And Amy really loved the ocean. It wasn't too far from where she lived, so she loved to look out her window and she could kind of see a little bit of it, and she loved the blue color of the ocean. She thought it was just beautiful, but she thought there was something sad. When she looked in the mirror, she didn't see blue eyes like the ocean, like her mother had these beautiful blue eyes like the ocean. Amy had brown eyes. She thought they were kind of ugly. She wished she didn't have brown eyes. Well, she kept thinking about it, and one day when she was 3 years old, she decided she was going to ask God for something. She was going to ask God to change her brown eyes to blue eyes, because that just sounded like a good idea, and God answers prayer. He always answers. That's what her mother had told her. So she prayed really hard. God, please make my eyes blue like the ocean. And she was so excited. She went to bed. The next morning, I'll wake up and I'll have blue eyes. So she woke up the next morning, she ran over to her dresser, she moved everything off so she could see the mirror, and she looked in the mirror and she still had brown eyes. Oh, she was so disappointed. What had happened? Amy had asked God for blue eyes and she still had brown. Why didn't God answer? But you know what God did answer? He just answered no. And sometimes no is a good answer. We're going to find out why. And it was because that's how God made Amy. He made her with brown eyes, and he had a special reason. There was a lot of things for her to do instead. Well, we're going to skip ahead in the story, but remember, next time when we start again, we'll go back to when she was a little girl. So when she grew up, Amy went to India as a missionary, and she wanted to tell the people in India all about God's love for them and how much he cared for them, and that his son Jesus had died on the cross to pay the penalty for their sins. Well, she got to India, and the hard part was she didn't look like the Indian people. Her skin was the same color, she didn't dress the same way, she didn't look like them. And they weren't really sure they wanted to talk to her or really have that much to do with her. So Amy had a really hard time getting to know the people and trying to figure out how she could best help them understand who Jesus was and how they needed to know him as their savior. It was really difficult for her. She started to learn the language. She tried her best to learn about the people, but she still felt like an outsider. She kept praying and asking God for some ideas on how she could get to know the people better and understand them. And as she watched, she decided that something that seemed to be very important to the Indian people was their temple. They spent a lot of time in their temples, and she thought, maybe if I understand what they're doing in the temple, then I'll be able to understand how to help them. But she couldn't just walk into the temple. She doesn't look like the rest of them. They weren't going to be very happy about that. So she began to pray and think about how she could get into the temple and learn about the Indian people some more. Well, God gave her a great idea. She found that if she took coffee grounds, she could rub them on her skin. It would kind of turn her skin a little bit brown, and then she could wrap a sari around herself, like the Indian type of clothing, and it would like wrap around her head and under her arm and a part of her shoulder. And she found that she looked a lot like the Indian people when she dressed like that. And one of her friends pointed out, well, Amy, this works even better for you because you have brown eyes. Oh, that's why God had told her no. Because he wanted her to be able to help the Indian people. And if she had blue eyes, they would look at her all dressed up and they would know right away, she doesn't look like an Indian. But since she had brown eyes, she could blend in a lot better. So this was her plan. She prayed, she asked for God to protect her, and she went into one of the temples. Now they weren't lit very much. They just had a few little lights on the side and like some incense burning, so it's not like it was super bright in there. But she could walk right in because she looked just like the rest of the women, and she could look around and understand what it was that the people did in the temple. She saw a lot of idols, fake gods, and it was really sad to her to see all these people praying and talking to these idols, and the idols weren't going to talk back. They couldn't say anything. But Amy watched, and she listened, and she tried to learn more and more about the people and how they worshiped, and it helped her understand how better to tell them about Jesus. Well, one day when she was at the temple, she heard a parade outside. So she followed along just with everybody else, kind of blending right in, all dressed like them. And she wanted to see what they were doing in the parade. So she went outside, and there was a cart in the middle with a big idol on it, a big false god. And there were girls sitting on the cart from ages 4 to 10. And they looked really scared, and they looked afraid. They were all dressed the same. They were all dressed very fancy. Their hair was fixed all perfectly. They had white crown flowers around their heads. But they looked really scared. And Amy watched as this carriage pulled the idol all the way into the temple, and then the doors shut. Amy wondered what's going to happen to these girls. They're just stuck. Well, she found out that families, if they didn't have money, or if they wanted to get in good favor with all the different gods, that they would just give their girls to the temple, and the girls would be like the slaves at the temple. Amy thought, this isn't right. This isn't how these girls should live. And she saw that look of fear in their eyes, and she knew she had to do something. But what? How was she going to help these girls? You're going to have to come back next time to find out how God gives Amy a great idea and how she can help them.
The good news is that you ended by calling her Amy. Phew.
I really loved that other story, and now I can't move on.
I was wondering how long it would take you to switch back over. Like,
did I say Mary again in the middle?
No, but at the beginning you did 2 or 3 times. I was like, I hope I won't have to remind her.
No.
All right. Today we are going to look at somebody who lives over on the other side of the world.
Yep.
A few miles away from where Alyssa used to live. Right?
Actually, she lived like right across the street from
Okay,
me.
less than a few miles. So, we are going to look at a missionary that my home church supports, and someone that Alyssa went to church with and got to serve with on occasion. So, let's get right into it. And her name is Rhonda Green, and she serves on Guam, but she serves more than just the people there. She serves people who come from the surrounding islands as well. And so we say that she serves in Micronesia, which Guam is part of.
But it includes more outer islands like Yap, Ponape, Chuuk, Koshai, a bunch of the islands where the Bible college students come from, and then a lot of other people from those islands that come to live on Guam too.
So that's why we don't just say that she serves on Guam, because it's much more than just that little island.
Yep.
Well, I made a video of her a couple years ago when I went to Guam, and so we're going to show you that and let her tell you herself what she does, because that is the best way really to let you know who she is and what she does.
My name is Rhonda Green, and I moved to Guam 17 years ago in 2001. I work with Micronesians here on Guam, specifically the Chukis, but because I work at the Bible College, I also work with Ponapeans and Marshallese and Yappies, Palauans, Kosharians. So many different people God has allowed me to share the love of Jesus Christ with. I get the privilege of driving a lot and taking kids back and forth to church, picking up the kids and bringing them to hear God's Word here at Harvest. There is a C2C, or Children to Christ program, and a special one just for the bus kids down here under the blue tent. And that is where the Bible college students get to practice what they are actually learning in class, and they are the ones that actually run the program. And it's really a privilege to be able to see God growing them in their learning of the ministries that they have. And then also we have Heart for Christ. That's for our teenagers, 7th grade and up. They have a time to play as well as a time to hear God's Word. Sometimes we do different activities on weekends and different things that I am able to pick up the teenagers on the part of the bus ministry. It's just really a privilege to be here and to be able to work with these people. One of the neat things is the bus ministry has graduated its first graduates from the Bible College. And so that means that they have gone from high school or before, all the way up through and graduated from high school and now graduated through Bible college.
There was this big yellow limousine. You guys don't know what the big yellow limousine is? It's that harvest bus that it faithfully picks up VIP people from my neighborhood, kids to teenagers. And it brings us here to Harvest to learn more about Christ. That big yellow limousine, because of its faithfulness in the ministry and the people that poured out their lives into it, Miss Rhonda specifically, because of that reason, Christ had made me realize that God has a better plan for me.
So it's exciting to see how God is working in their lives, and I'm excited to see what God's going to do with them in the years to come. A couple of them are wanting to go be teachers, and one is wanting to be a preacher, so who knows, to see what God will do with them. Also have opportunity to work with some of the bus kids' moms and their families and trying to help them. Started many years ago with the burden to what can I do to help with these, get the gospel to these kids. And now it's a burden to how can I help their families. One lady is allowing me to do a Bible study with her, and we're going slowly through the milk book and looking up the verses, and it's just really neat to be able to be a help to her, not just physically but also spiritually. And there's also other bus moms that come with me to a ladies' Bible study here at Harvest during the school year on Thursday mornings, and they really enjoy that. I don't know if it's because there's food there or if they're not just physical food but also spiritual food. So thank you for your prayers, for your investment in what God is doing out here in the islands. And I just want to be, it's just a special place in my heart. And it's because of your prayers that God has enabled me to stay out here. Thank you.
So that's Miss Rhonda.
Yeah. Gives you a good idea of what she does. She serves with adults, does a lot of ladies' ministries, Bible studies. She also works with teens in the youth groups, and also drives bus, picks up kids for kids clubs. And so she works with people of all ages and does a lot of different things.
She's always really busy. She's always driving that Suburban around to take someone somewhere or do something. She was always on the go and has such a great attitude and spirit about encouraging other people too. I always love talking to Miss Green.
Yep. So now we're going to share with you some of the praises and prayer requests that she sent us. And so you can have a good idea of some of the things she's doing this week, or her ministry, what she's doing, what they're doing, and some of the things that they need prayer for.
Yep.
And I'll let Alyssa share those and also maybe provide some details, because she's been keeping up with her friends and those on island to know what has been going on with the virus and everything. And so she has a good idea of how this has been affecting Rhonda Green and the ministry there.
Yeah. So obviously coronavirus is all over the world. It's even on Guam. And I think they got really nervous because there's a lot of people that travel in and out of Guam for tourism or for business and such. So they definitely did the whole shutdown thing, but it's kind of been slower to open up. And since they're close to Asia as well, the Asian influence would be a lot of masks and a lot of just care and making sure you're not spreading germs and stuff. So Miss Rhonda asks for opportunities to serve despite the virus, because it's hard if she's used to, meeting up with people all the time and she can't do that because they don't want to have all that extra exposure. That's really tough. And then they just kind of waiting it out. The government is kind of weird out there. They make really quick decisions one way or the other. And she's really thankful though for the internet and how she's been able to still connect with people that way. I'm sure it's tough not to be in person, but at least there's still a way to connect with some of those different people. And she's really thankful for the Bible college graduates. They still got to graduate this year. Graduation looked a little different, which is a bummer because it's one of their biggest events of the year. It's really big and exciting, but she's really thankful for those students because some of them even got saved on the bus ministry that she does. So that's really encouraging for her to be able to see them go to the college and then hopefully go and minister, maybe back to their own home island. There's some islands that an outside person could never go to. But some of these students can come to the Bible college, they can learn, and they can go back to that island because they're from there, and they can own land, and they can have a business, and they can share Christ because they're from there. And some of us couldn't ever do that, which is really cool that God brings some of those people to Harvest, and that Miss Rhonda gets to minister to them too. She wants prayer for wisdom to find new ways to minister to people as they're physically apart. Not everybody has internet access out there. Some people have a lot, but a more rough home situation than here, and it's hot out there. But she just wants to look for new creative ways to reach out to people. And then prayer for wisdom for the school and the government as they decide how to open up in the fall. And I feel like there's probably going to be all sorts of crazy restrictions and stuff on them that's going to make it really tough and hard for those students who wanted to go home to their islands for the summer. There's one island that if they go, they have to quarantine for so many weeks when they get there, and then quarantine when they get back. So it's like almost a month of quarantine. You can't leave your room kind of quarantine. So just prayer and wisdom as they move forward from here. But that's Miss Green or Miss Rhonda out on Guam serving the people of Micronesia.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again next time. Please share with your friends, comment, everything we always ask you to do that you probably never do, but we would like it if you did anyway. And we'll look forward to doing another one next week.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.